from Italy. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we all meet today, from all different corners of Australia. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past, present, and future. Costantino DOrazio is a scholar and an expert of art history. But what we love most about him is his passion for art and its secrets, and his ability to ignite our curiosity and love for Italian artists. Well, this is indeed an exciting event for us. This is our first webinar organized with the Italian Cultural Institute in Sydney, and we look forward to the following two webinars with Costantino DOrazio, one dedicated to Michelangelo on the 26th of June, and the other to the emotions of art from Bernini to Balla on the 6th of August. Before I turn you over to Lillo Guarneri, Director of the Italian Cultural Institute in Sydney, I would like to say grazie Costantino, and grazie a tutti voi for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Laura. Welcome again, Costantino. Just a few words about this event. We have in the world 83 Italian Cultural Institute, 2 in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne. The Institute is a body of Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and our mission is to promote our language and culture through the organization of courses, concerts, exhibition, cinema screening, theatrical events, and of course, lecture. I think that this is a difficult time for Italy and for all over the world, but all these events that we are proposing to you demonstrate the vitality of our country and of our two institutes. Basically, we need to start again from the culture. I thank my colleagues of the Italian Culture Institute in Melbourne and all my staff for making this event possible. And of course, I thank all of you, all our followers, for being here tonight, thanks to technology. I am sure that you will enjoy the lecture of our friend Costantino. And tonight, thanks to expertise of the great communication skill of our guest, we will discover some different aspects of Michelangelo Merisi, il Caravaggio, il pittore maledetto. I have always been fascinated by Caravaggio for his personality, for being extreme, always between light and darkness, between the sacred and the profane, between the life and the death. Well, while we look forward to welcoming all of you again here at the Institutes, please keep in contact with us, spread and enjoy our online cultural events. And now, a warm welcome to our guest, Costantino DOrazio. Prego, Costantino, a te la parola.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, Laura and Lillo, and your institutes and the other institutions that helped in organizing this webinar. Thank you for all of you. We are already 185 attendees now. I'm sure we're gonna grow up. So, I mean, it's an experiment. I mean, I'm sure you've been already involved in maybe family parties on Zoom or your meetings, depending on the job that you do. Well, speaking about culture and paintings and about art in a webinar, it's not always easy because we have to somehow change the way we receive emotions from images and also from the one that speaks to you, that talks to you, me in this moment. So we will start immediately speaking about Caravaggio. I will escort you all along his life, stopping at the masterpieces that represented the turning point of his life and his career. Life and work are absolutely intertwined and overlapping in Caravaggio's career. So I would start sharing my desktop, so you will start immediately seeing the images that I prepared for you. Okay, here we are. Okay, I hope you'll see my screen and the images. This is a portrait of Caravaggio made in 1621. So over 10 years after his death. The memory that Caravaggio left in Italy and all over Europe, let's say all over the Mediterranean, was absolutely great right after his death, because the way he painted was felt so revolutionary, so new, absolutely unexpected by the young artists that lived and worked at the very beginning of the 1600s, that he basically governed, ruled over the arts in the first part of the 1600s, even if he was not there anymore. But started from the second half of the 1600s and then later on, the memory of Caravaggio, and this is quite interesting and quite weird to say today, that we consider Caravaggio one of the most famous, glamorous, and attracting artists all over the world. Well, in the second half of the 1600s and later on, the memory of Caravaggio and the style of Caravaggio basically faded away, was not appreciated anymore. So what's the reason of his success? And what's the reason of why people considered his art so controversial? Well, we can understand that looking at these two masterpieces. The one you have on the left of your screen is a fresco painted by Annibale Carracci and his followers on the ceiling of Palazzo Farnese in Rome. The one on the right of the screen is one of the three canvases Caravaggio painted for the church of San Luigi dei Francesi in Rome. Both art pieces were presented in the Jubilee year of 1600s. Well, I'm sure you can really tell that those two paintings look as if they've been made in two different eras, in two different ages, by two completely different generations of artists. But they've been made the same moment, in the same city, by artists that were more or less same age. Annibale was a bit older. Well, why is that? Well, we consider Annibale Carracci one of the latest follower of Michelangelo's and Raphael's maniera. So the way they painted beautiful, strong bodies, and this light, which is always bright. So it's the last step of the mannerism art that developed in the 1500s. Caravaggio set a new era, using, as Lillo Guarnieri was saying, the contrast between light and darkness. He starts a completely new way of considering the power of color and the power of emotions. The meeting of these two geniuses in Rome sets a completely turning point on the arts. How Caravaggio managed to make this revolution? Well, he was born in 1571. He died in 1610, lived only 39 years. In Milan, north of Italy. This is how Italy looked, the turning point between 15 and 1600s, okay? The Duchy of Milan, in the north, was a small state, a satellite state of the Kingdom of Spain, we may say. And even if his name is Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio, from Caravaggio, so from a little town, which is not Milan, but it's in province of Bergamo today, he was born in Milan. And you have to know that we knew about this recently. We had the proof that he was born in Milan only in 2007. And it was not because of a scholar or because of an expert of Caravaggio paintings. Experts really fought a lot, had a great debate about his birthday and the year and the day, because, you know, Caravaggio is like Leonardo or Michelangelo. We really want to know every single news on a daily basis, no, of their life. We are obsessed by getting information of every single day they lived on this earth. So being absolutely uncertain about Caravaggio's birthday was a great problem. But you know, it was not because of a scholar, of an expert, that we got to know the truth about Caravaggio's date of birth. It was because of a retired TLC employee, a gentleman who was fond of archives, who, when he got time to go into archives in Milan, he started searching and he found this book. This book is the register of the baptisms in a parish in the center of Milan, where you can see marked from the black arrow. In that line, we have that. We know that on the 30th of September, 1571, Caravaggio got baptized. And it was quite common to get christened the day after the birthday, because children used to die quite soon. It was quite dangerous for them. So they wanted, the parents usually wanted to let them become son of God immediately, because if they got killed or they died soon, at least they could pretend to get into heaven. So because of a normal citizen, we got this truth. And it's quite interesting. His family, Caravaggio's family, was in Milan because his father was working for the Duchy of Milan, but they moved soon to Caravaggio. When Caravaggio was 12, he had already lost his father and his mother, and I always like to underline this information. It was because of his mother that Caravaggio started to go and work in the laboratory of a painter. So it was because of his mother that he started his career. His master was not so famous painter today, was called Simone Peterzano. This is just one of the paintings that he made, but I selected this because you can really see some of the manners of the realistic way of painting features that Caravaggio later on started to use when he started his own career. Simone Peterzano pretended, we're not sure, but he was saying himself that he was a follower of Titian, a painter from Venice. You know, Bergamo, you saw maybe in the map before, was inside the Venetian land, territory. So it's very important to know that and to keep in mind that the manners Caravaggio started when he was a child was the one of Titian, of the Venetian painters. Look at this. This is by portraits by Titian. Look how much already in the mid-1500s Titian was working on the relationship between darkness and light. The light was just hitting some details of the faces of the people he portraited. Look at this. This is just one of the details that Caravaggio painted in Rome, the faces of Jesus and the calling of St. Matthew. Giorgione, another painter of the Renaissance, Venetian Renaissance, most famous for the true way, the commendable way he was painting the features of old ladies. Caravaggio's old lady in the Judith and Holofernes painting in Rome. So look how much Venetian painting got into Caravaggio's memory and style. Again, Giorgione, portrait of a young boy, and one of the early paintings Caravaggio made when he got to Rome. The same background light, the same position of the head, the same way of painting young boys in a very sensual way. It's very important. Well, I mean, tonight, I really want you to have information that you barely see in YouTube videos or in conferences. I want to really tell you the truth about the education of Caravaggio and how much the style of Caravaggio was born, not because of his own talent, but because of what he saw during his childhood, younghood, and then later on when he got to Rome. So, after almost 20 years, Caravaggio in 1592 left the last document that prove his presence in Milan. So the last year he got in Milan was 1592. We then lost him, we lose him, we don't know anything about him until 1596. 4 years gap. We don't know, we have no information about him. And can you imagine how much art historians now are struggling, fighting, and like longing to discover? Me too. I mean, part of group of people that would love to find a little trace of Caravaggio somewhere. I believe maybe in Venice, along these 4 years. Anyway, 1596. We have the first documents of Caravaggio in Rome. When he got to Rome, the biographers told that he had no protection. I mean, he didn't come to Rome because he wanted, he had some powerful friends. He was just one of the many other young artists that wanted to find his fortune and his job in this city that was keeping on growing and growing. I mean, Caravaggio didn't want to spend his whole life in a satellite country. He wanted to be in the center, in the core of the arts. He wanted to become immortal, just like Michelangelo and Raphael. And he knew that this could only happen in Rome. So he went and lived by a priest next to the Vatican City. His brother, Caravaggio's brother, had become a priest in the meantime. And he nicknamed this guy Monsignor Salad. Salad. I mean, the food, because the biographer told that Caravaggio was always complaining that this guy was giving salad for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day to this young guy. So he understood immediately they couldn't, get anything out of this experience and this friendship. So he started moving from the Vatican City, so the Borgo district, towards the center of Rome, and he settled down in this area. This area, Reggio Scrofa, as you can read at the top of the screen, we are in between Piazza Navona, you see Campus Agon, Navona Square, and the Pantheon, which is not in the map, at the north. All the red dots that you see in this map are the places, the locations where we have proved of the presence of Caravaggio during the 10 years he lived in Rome, between 1596 and 1606. As you can see, he's always been in the same area. He never lived in other districts. He never made almost anything out of Via della Scrofa. He was kind of addicted to habits. He loved routine. He didn't like to move that much. And as a matter of fact, the amazing happenings of his life and his career, they all happened there. So when you come back to Rome, I hope quite soon, it's gonna be possible again, just move in these 100 meters of streets and you will see, you will feel, we will still feel today Caravaggio's atmosphere over there. So what happened there? What was the very first presentation, introduction of Caravaggio in Roman art scene? He started painting, he started going, we don't know how he got in touch with the laboratory, the workshop of a very famous artist called Cavalier d'Arpino. Just to tell you how much great he was been appointed exactly in that moment of painting the interiors of St. Peter's Dome. So, he was really one of the top artists of the age, but he left Caravaggio painting just heads and still lives in the paintings he had, in the minor paintings he had in his workshop. So he never involved Caravaggio in great commissions. And we know that Caravaggio was complaining about that. So one day, Caravaggio got hurt by a horse and he got into a hospital next to the Capitol Hill in Rome. During those days, we know that he managed to paint while he was at the hospital. And he painted canvases for the doctor that he was taking care of himself. This is one of the paintings he made during that convalescence period, the so-called young sick Bacchus. We believe his self-portrait. It is the very first time, Longhi, a great art historian who studied this painting very well in the 1950s, and gave the title to this painting. It is the very first time in which we have the image of Bacchus, the god of passion, the god of wine, the god of life, as a sick guy, a bit sad. I mean, you don't distinguish these colors very well in this image, but it's yellowish, no? His skin is as yellow as the grapes he's having in his hand. So it's a very melancholic image of this alive, lively God. Of course, because it is his self-portrait. Because Caravaggio never painted images just because he was looking at them by heart. He always painted real models in front of himself. He didn't have any model at that moment apart from himself. But at the same time, he started slightly changing traditional iconographies. For the very first time, we have a daring young artist who dare to change an old, ancient iconography, setting a new iconography. And this is something he kept on doing for the rest of his career and his life. Now, this painting, it's very weird. I'm going a little bit forward, okay, in his life. So now we are in 1597, okay, when he made this painting. But 10 years later, Caravaggio already left Rome. 1607, Scipione Borghese, the great cardinal, the nephew of the Pope at that age, who was fond of Caravaggio, but he didn't have Caravaggio anymore in Rome because he had already left to Naples. At a certain point, got the information that this painting was part of the collection of Cavalier d'Arpino. So even if Cavalier d'Arpino had never involved Caravaggio in a great commission, he loved to keep and collect the paintings of these young artists. So he had understood the talent of Caravaggio, the Cavalier, the knight, Cavalier d'Arpino. Well, Scipione Borghese somehow manages to got Cavalier d'Arpino sued because they found a gun in his home, and he condemned, he basically obtains all the collection of Cavalier d'Arpino, including paintings that Caravaggio left there. That's why this painting today is in Borghese Gallery. So again, people hated and loved Caravaggio at the same time during his life. This is one of the paintings, same year, 1597, that started to give Caravaggio a public reputation. Well, at that age, you have to imagine that Rome was just like any other city today in terms of art scene. I mean, young artists, if they wanted to start a career, either they got somehow connected with the nobles, with cardinals, or if they didn't have any possibility to get in touch with the rich ones, they had the chance to show their paintings in public, let's say unofficial shows, exhibitions, set in the squares of Rome. So we know that this painting was shown by Caravaggio in front of the Pantheon in one of the many exhibitions by young artists having place there. But it's a great painting. A painting, we have 2 copies of this painting by Caravaggio. It means that it was a very successful subject, a very successful image. Why is it so important? Well, you can see a boy bitten by a lizard. He had just tried to get one of the fruits on the table. He didn't see there was a lizard among the leaves, and he got bitten in his finger. Well, this image is again, revolutionary Caravaggio's interpretation of this image. This is a drawing that have been studied by Caravaggio's contemporaries, young artists, hundreds and hundreds of times. It's a drawing by Sofonisba Anguissola, in which she portrays her young brother, Asdrubale, which is bitten by a crowfish. Now, why did the artist wanted to study and copy this painting, this drawing, sorry? Because they wanted to understand how to portray the crying features of a face, the expression of crying. Now, let's get back to Caravaggio. Now there is the first poll that the Italian culturists in Melbourne set for you. You will see popping up these polls every now and then, okay? I'm not giving you marks, I'm giving you grades, I'm not gonna mark you, so don't you worry. All the responses are anonymous. So the first question is, look at the painting by Caravaggio. Look at the boy bitten by a lizard. What's the emotion that he's feeling? Is it pain? Is it surprise? Is it disappointment? Well, you know why this question deserves to be considered and responded? Because Caravaggio, for the first time, represents an emotion that is not clear. This guy is not just crying, just like Asdrubale. He is somehow having a very complex emotion. And this emotion is set at the corner, at the triangle between the eyes and the nose. Well, so Caravaggio starts to create new emotions. Not only that. So most of you said surprise. Well, of course, it's surprise, but at the same time, we have 21% of pain and disappointment. I have to tell you, there is not one and only answer to this question. Because Caravaggio started to create complex emotions, which are our emotions. Our emotions are never like standard, you know? But Caravaggio also added one more detail to this painting. Not only unclear emotion, complicated, ambiguous emotion, I may say. Ambiguity is another key word for Caravaggio's painting. But also, if you look at the drawing, are you able, there's no poll now, are you able to say when the crowfish bit Asdrubale? Did it happen 5 minutes ago, a moment ago, an hour ago? There's no information about this detail in Sofonisba's drawing. But here, you have the clear intuition, the clear possibility to say that it's been just bitten by the lizard. And you know what? It's because of the shoulder that is in the foreground, completely lit by the light of these interiors. And because by this shoulder, the Caravaggio gave us the impression of the movements that it's doing backwards. So Caravaggio not only renovated the emotions, but also added something that already Leonardo da Vinci, for those that took part of my lecture in Melbourne some month ago, added the idea of the instant. So it's the instant. We're starting from this moment. Caravaggio's scene are always happening exactly in that moment in front of our eyes. Somebody likes to say that Caravaggio paints photographies. Well, maybe we can say that are like still of movies or photographies. It's something that we say because we know about photography, you didn't know about that, but the idea is that there is always something happening exactly in this moment, like in this, the card sharps. The card sharper in the yellow shirt is about to take out the cards and betray, you know, the player, and there is the other one who's just giving some hints. But here there is always, again, another interesting combination about 2 different or 3 different emotions. Look how much the colorful card sharp is intention, whereas the black-dressed noble guy, because black clothes were just for the nobles that age, is really quiet, is not absolutely understanding what's happening, no, right now there. Of course, this is an image that Caravaggio got from the restaurants or the squares or the bars that he was not just joining and living in Rome. It's an image that he was, he was starting telling about the daily life of Rome, but it's not just a chronicle. It's a construction of attention, of emotions, of gestures, and beware of that. Caravaggio not always painted figures in the darkness. I mean, these paintings that I'm showing you so far, they're not dark and light. They're quite clear images and colorful ones. So the palette, Caravaggio's palette, changes slowly while he's in Rome. Well, this painting starts a new life and a new moment of the career of Caravaggio. Because we know that a cardinal, this guy, Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte, saw this painting, the card sharps, and another painting, both showing up in the vitrine, the window of a shop along Via della Scrofa, where Francesco Maria del Monte was living. He was living in Palazzo Medici, was one of the ambassadors of Florence to Rome, and he was a talent scout. He loved being surrounded by young artists. So he understood that the author of that painting, the card sharps, was absolutely interesting, and he started to invite Caravaggio at his home. He started to protect Caravaggio. And it was very important for Caravaggio because Caravaggio was very easy to get into fights. He was already very famous in Rome because he had, he was hitting and beating people. He was more into in a trial than in a workshop. Okay, so the reputation of Caravaggio was already very, very bad, but being protected by the cardinal allowed him to go around with a sword, and being protected by a cardinal would even allow him not to be sued and get into trials. So it was a very important sliding door for Caravaggio's career and life. This is one of the paintings he made in Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte Palace. Again, still a very light palette, musicians that are about to get on a stage in Francesco Maria del Monte Palace, home. That's why they are getting the last rehearsals of some musics, but at the background, you have a Cupid. You have a guy with wings, because that guy is an actor. Is about to join the show of these three musicians, painted in a very, very short, little space. But there is another interesting character that Caravaggio added in this painting. It's the ambiguity in the sexual expression and impression of these figures. Androgyny is going to become one of the recurrent leitmotifs of Caravaggio's painting. Well, thanks to Francesco Maria del Monte, Caravaggio has the possibility to get his first public commission. So, thanks to this cardinal, he starts working in a church that was, again, along Via della Scrofa. So everything happened there, believe me. This is the church, still there, San Luigi de Francesi. I'm sure many of you already entered this church. But there was a chapel owned by a French cardinal, Cardinal Quantrell à la Française, who was still not decorated in 1598, 1599. Well, the friars of San Luigi de Francesi knew that in the year 1600 there was a jubilee planned, so millions of Catholics would gather into Rome, and they didn't want this church to be partly not painted. So they went to Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte asking him a name to solve these problems. A quick artist, somebody that would made this chapel fantastic in a few months. And Francesco Maria del Monte, just like a magician, took out of a hat the name of Caravaggio. Well, Caravaggio, as I told you, not the talented artist at that age, but mostly the very bad guy, the one that could not be, I mean, you couldn't be confident about his life, what he would do. But Caravaggio accepted the job, of course, and immediately set his conditions. He would have never made frescoes. And if you get back to San Luigi de' Francesi, you will understand that this is the only chapel in the church that has no frescoes, apart from those on the vault that were not made by Caravaggio, but by Cavalier d'Arpino, who tried and had the possibility to start decorating, but then left the job. Anyway, why Caravaggio wanted to make canvases and not frescoes? Because he wanted to have the possibility to change the images till the very last minute. What is not possible with frescoes. So in this chapel, this is exactly how you see it today, staying out of that. You have the calling of St. Matthew, and on the left-hand side, in front, inspiration, on the right-hand side, the martyrdom of St. Matthew. Matthew, because the cardinal who was owning this chapel was called Matthew, Mathieu Quantrell. So Caravaggio starts from the painting on the right-hand side, the martyrdom. And this painting, think of that, was the very first painting ever studied with X-rays in 1951. So the experiment of studying with X-rays a painting started here with this piece by Caravaggio. Why do we need to study a painting through the X-rays? Because X-rays allows us to understand the process of the birth of a painting. So we know that Caravaggio started this scene choosing a completely different like setting. This is in white, you can see underlined the borders of the figures that are behind the actual image, okay? So you can see that Caravaggio decided at the very beginning to create a scene in which you have a soldier that you see from the back and the center, and all of the other figures were set around the guy that was about to kill St. Matthew. St. Matthew is in the background trying to escape, and the angel is not arriving from the top, just like it happens in the final image, but is arriving from the right-hand side, which is even little than the other figures. I mean, so it's a perfect construction with an architecture behind it. A very Mannerist, 1500s image that does not persuade Caravaggio. So basically, he stops painting this scene and gets to the other one, to the martyrdom, okay? Sorry, to the calling, okay? So this is the calling that he paints as if it's showing a scene happening in one of the restaurants of Rome. You see the table with the figures on the left-hand side of the painting dressed in the contemporary scene. And then on the right-hand side, you have Jesus with Peter calling him. New Paul, looking at this figure, before I'm going to tell you not the truth, but what I think about, who is Matthew among those seated around the table? The one seated on the far left, the one with a beard, or the one with a feather on his hat? Well, I'm saying that because Pope Francis, when he got elected Pope, he gave his first interview to an important newspaper of Rome, of Italy, Corriere della Sera, and he said, you know what? I don't know so much about Rome, but what I know quite well is the Contarelli Chapel, because I used to sleep in a locanda for a hotel for cardinals every time I was going to Rome. And I remember quite well. Have you responded? I'm going to say the opinion of Pope Francis. I don't want it to influence your opinion. Huh? Well, I mean, he said, you know, I remember very well Matthew that is counting the coins. So Pope Francis said that Matthew is the one sitting on the far left of the painting. Well, is it that? Now, let's get to the story. This is an episode that happened to Matthew, who was a tax collector, that we know in the gospel he wrote, one day Jesus was going out of a house, and by passing by, look at the bottom right of the painting. Oh, great. You think just like Pope Francis, 52%. Great. Let's see if the same opinion I have. Anyway, Jesus is passing by. Look at the right, bottom right. You see the feet of Jesus. Jesus is really passing by. So walking perpendicularly towards another direction. But he turns and see Matthew and calls him. Look at the gesture of Jesus. Look at the hand of Jesus. Look at these hands. It is not true that Caravaggio does not consider Michelangelo or Raphael. He loves them. He mutilates, he takes details from them because there is a religious meaning. Jesus, for the Counter-Reformation, so for the church in the 1600s, is considered the new Adam. And that's why the way he calls it is exactly like the way Adam receives life from God, painted on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. You never thought of that, huh? I'm sure. Anyway, he calls Matthew. Who's Matthew? Now, if Pope Francis is right, and Matthew is the young one that's counting the coins, well, it would have been quite difficult for the faithfuls, for the poor ones, to understand who was Matthew. Because, first of all, if Matthew is the young one, what's the detail that tells you about that? But if Matthew is the bearded one, look at that. It would be a bearded guy, the only bearded guy in each painting. Bearded guy in the Inspiration, bearded guy in the tax collecting, the book in the calling, and bearded guy in the martyrdom. And you can even see that the beard gets whiter and whiter, okay, while he gets older and older. First detail. So this could be one of the details. Second detail. Can you see that he's got something on his hat? It's a coin, because he's wearing his uniform as a tax collector. Third detail, if he was the bearded one, pointing out the one sitting at the left of the table, say, are you telling to him? Are you saying at him? Would the back of his hand be dark? Look at the hand of Jesus. It's parallel and it's in light. But the painting, the hand of Matthew is dark. So it means that he's pointing at himself. Are you saying at me? And why is he saying, are you telling at me? Because this painting, I'm going to show you now, sorry, I'm going fast backwards, was not visible from the front by the faithfuls. They could only see that from the out of the painting that's today. So the call of Jesus would pass through Matthew and hit the faithfuls. They had to say, are you saying at me? Sorry, I'm going back, sorry, yeah, but I understood I didn't put. So the idea is that the calling of Matthew is not happening only to Matthew. It is happening to us every single day. And that's why Matthew and his friends are wearing modern clothes, and Peter and Jesus are wearing historical, old clothes, ancient clothes, because they're coming from the past and hitting our contemporary days in the 1600s and even today. Can you understand how much strong is Caravaggio's sense of religion? Can you understand how much strong is his persuasion of being a faithful that is speaking to other faithfuls and is sending a message of the church? Peter was not present in this episode in the Gospel of Matthew, but Peter, which is the last figure that he paints, Caravaggio paints in this figure, is the symbol of church, okay? So that's why he's there. You have to look at this painting, not only because of the emotions they say, but because of the complicated messages that are sent into that. So then, after that, he gets back to this painting, changed completely the scene, and set at the center this guy, New Paul. What's the naked guy in the center doing? What do you think? Well, Matthew was celebrating the christening of the guys, the naked guys sitting around a pool in the foreground. He gets hit by a sword. And if you can see at this very center, he's bleeding. It's very, very difficult to see in this image, but he's bleeding. Then this guy gets up and takes the sword. What is he doing? Now, while I'm waiting for your responses, I want you to look not only at the face that is shouting and the sword, but also at the hand of the naked one who's lifting up the hand of Matthew, helping him to take the branch of palm tree, which is a symbol of martyrdom, which is about to come down thanks to the angel. So he's helping him to become a martyr, to be accepted in his sacrifice by God. And there is another important detail in here. Look at the circled figure. This is a self-portrait of Caravaggio. He's telling us he's painting something that he actually saw. Bravo! You all said the truth. He's helping Matthew, 85%. Caravaggio wanted to say, I'm painting something real because I saw it with my own eyes. Reality was his obsession. Now, this 3 canvases, because there's also a third one over here, the inspiration, gives Caravaggio the possibility to get out of Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte house, to get his own house that we discovered. This is the home of Caravaggio around 1604. We found it in a little ale next to Via della Scrofa. And it's very interesting because in the contract for the rental contract that he signed, he asks to the owner of this little palace to take off the ceiling between the first floor and the room out under the roof. Okay. Well, this information is very important. Why does he want to take off, to dismantle the roof? Because he's about to paint very high canvases, like this one here, for the church of Sant'Agostino. So he needed space, because at that moment he was painting at home. He always painted at home. He had painted the walls of his flat dark black. He was inviting the models and painted these figures. In this case, the Virgin Mary that is welcoming these 2 pilgrims in front of her home. The Virgin Mary wears a yellow cloth. Can you see on her shoulder? Well, yellow was the color of prostitutes, of courtesans. The Virgin Mary is wearing the color of prostitutes. But Caravaggio knew that the Basilica of Sant'Agostino was the church where the prostitutes could go and attend the service every single Sunday morning. There was a service with speeches by the priest just for them. So he wants the prostitutes to recognize themselves in the figure of the Virgin Mary, which would talk and live also for the poor ones, for the prostitutes. They had a hope to get welcomed by the Virgin Mary. And the face of this lady was a very renowned young mother's face that maybe Caravaggio had an affair with. Not only this little scandal of the yellow clothes, maybe you remember the dark feet of these pilgrims that have the faces of the commissioners, the Cavalletti couple, paid Caravaggio to be portrayed as poor pilgrims in these paintings. But they were part of a group of faithfuls that loved, we're always speaking about the poor church, the church of the very first ages. And so the scandal of the dirty feet, the scandal of being, dressing up the Virgin Mary with the color of the prostitute, and also a detail that is quite difficult to be pointed out. Look at the feet of the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary is holding a big boy. Jesus is really big. How would it be possible? She's just on her toes, on both feet. You know why? Because the legend says that the Virgin Mary arrives in Italy, in Loreto, with her home brought by the angels. So he just landed in Loreto. That's why she's still getting her feet on the ground, and still stepping on her toes. You see how many details Caravaggio's painting have? Another painting he made in the same age, in the same home, is this one here. Virgin Mary, baby Jesus, and the old mother, Saint Anne. Now, many other details, but I want to point out one detail. New pole, where does the light come from? Where does the light come from in this? Top right, bottom left, top left. Why am I asking you that? Why am I asking you to point out, to look at the light? Because this light proves that Caravaggio painted these paintings in that home, enjoying and taking and representing the light that comes from the top left, as you can see, which is where this light is coming out from a little window. Bravo, top left, so 54%. Where does this light come from? Where does, in reality, this light come from? From the little window that is still there, under the roof. Only because he took off the ceiling and he realized that there's this beautiful light, which is like a spot on a theater stage that he can use for these paintings. Now, I have another few minutes to get in his career. The presence of Caravaggio in Rome, as you all know, it's in between great commissions and his very bad character. So he has a fight with a policeman, with a cop. He kills this guy in 1606. He is condemned to death and he has to escape Rome. So he goes to Naples, which is in another state. And in Naples, he makes some of his masterpieces, but this one here is the most interesting one, big one, and it's the 7 Acts of Mercy. This is inspired by the word of Jesus when he says, I was sick and you healed me. I didn't have a home and you hosted me. I was naked and you dressed me. So it's all happening, as you can see, in a very dark scene, as if it's happening in the street of Naples. Reality. But look carefully. Each of these figures are coming out of a traditional iconography. The girl that is giving his breast to an old man is a very old mythological figure that is visiting her father in the jail. And the guy that is sharing his clothes with the feather at the center, with the naked one, is San Martino. that is legendary sharing his clothes. Oh, the guy that is drinking at the very back is Samson, who's drinking after defeating the Philistine. So all of these figures are coming from a very high culture, both religious and pagan, but represented as if they are contemporary figures, people of the street. And the Virgin Mary at the very top is just coming out of these two beautiful wings of angels, just like a lady looking at what's happening in the streets without giving great attention, and also protecting his child, preventing him to fall down. Chronicle and high culture, both in this image. Caravaggio really changed the history of art in Naples. The most important Caravaggist painters, the followers of Caravaggio, are really Neapolitan. But again, Naples is not a city where he can become Michelangelo. It's Michelangelo or Raphael. So he accepts the invitation to Malta. In Malta, which is a city that is about to become a new Rome in the center of the Mediterranean, he paints a few canvases, and this one here. Last poll for tonight. It's very difficult. Can you see Caravaggio's signature? This is the beheading of Saint John the Baptist that is happening in front of our eyes as if it's happening on a stage. Very clear actions. The beheading one, and Saint John that is pushed down, those that are looking from a window. Caravaggio signs it using the blood of Saint John. F, because he had become a friar, thanks to the Knights of Malta. Okay, most of you couldn't see that. Of course, it was very small. But anyway, this is the signature. So coming from the blood of the neck of the Baptist, he uses part of the blood to sign this painting. Michelangelo, but the F is the most important letter because Caravaggio wanted to boast that he was a Knights of Malta. So he could get the forgiveness of the Pope because he was a Knights of Malta. But again, he fights with another Knights of Malta. He got into jail. He manages to escape. Very difficult to escape from there, but he was protected. He goes to Sicily because he wants to get back to Rome. In Sicily, he paints few paintings, huge ones that are both characterized by the same organization. You see void part of the painting at the top and figures in the lower part. You see? Why is that? Because Caravaggio has no time. He is escaping. He is followed by the Knights of Malta that didn't like the fact that he had escaped their jails. So he needs to make it fast. And he leaves empty most of the painting and leaving the details only on the lower part of that. From Sicily, he gets the money to go to Naples, approaching Rome slowly. In Naples, he paints this. We consider this one of the last paintings of Caravaggio, and the last one I'm going to show you tonight. It's difficult to understand if you're not in front of the real painting, but believe me, all the black background that you see in this Martyr of St. Ursula is the preparation of the painting. I mean, it is not a polished background. It's the background made with poor colors that had to be there to get the other color. So they were not polished because the other color had to glue to get on, to grasp the surface. And so he paints the figures only using the light colors for the details of their faces and their clothes. Basically, he paints the figures out of the empty painting, of the void painting, of the preparation. Anybody had done this before? He had to be quick. He had to make it clear. And so the hurry that he has in his life pushes him in experimenting new daring techniques. He arrives to Rome, but he never gets into the city. The legend says that he dies in Porto Ercole, in Tuscany. but it's absolutely still an hypothesis. There is no possibility that the bones that they say they found in a situation like this are this one here. I'm sure Caravaggio's death, it's still mysterious because the way he developed his career in between appreciation, condemnation, and between light and darkness is the only legacy he could leave to us. I'm a bit poetic now, but believe me, if you get to Porto Ercole, don't believe that within this horrible monument, you can see the bones of Caravaggio. They're still somewhere, just like the truth about his talent. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry, I got 6 minutes over the time they left me, but it's always like this when I speak about art. So thank you very, very much. We have few minutes for Q&A. I'm gonna stop sharing my desk now. Lillo, Laura, would you like to come back? Visible? I'm glad because we are still 196. So only 4 people left. Maybe because they were starving, I'm sure. And so they couldn't get. You have to turn on your micro, otherwise we don't hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I was fascinating. Thank you very much, Costantino. And I want to ask you something about his time in Sicily with his pupil, Minniti. Can you tell us about this short time that was, in my opinion, very important for his life and for life of Minniti?
Okay. First of all, I just want to tell Kylie that I cannot see any question. Q&A over here. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna answer these quick questions, but starting from Lillo's one. Sicily, well, Caravaggio arrived to Sicily and stopped there because he had a friend of him. Marco Minniti was one of his collaborators in Rome, and he found him in Syracuse when he got there. But he arrived there, chased by the Knights of Malta. But already he was considered a great master. So he was in the middle of being a very bad guy with the condemnation of both Knights of Malta and Pope together, but again, considered a genius. So he behaved like maybe most of us would have done. So he accepted the commission and say, I'm gonna do this painting for you only if you pay me 5 times my standard rate. Before that, he was getting around 200, 300 ducati for his paintings. Those 2 paintings, he got 1,000 ducati each. Take it or leave it. I don't have time to waste over there. But because he needed money to pay the passages from Sicily to Naples. But so in these 2 canvases, and there are 3 canvases, there is another one he made there, he went further so much in the use of darkness and void spaces that he left a mark, so strong mark in Sicily. And again, wherever he passed by, he changed the history of art. And even if he never had followers, official followers, he never had real collaborators, but he was one of the few that created a new generation of artists called the Caravaggists. And we have them all over Europe, including Sicily. Now we have few questions. Why are those 4 years absent from Caravaggio's life? Why is no document about that period of life? Rosaria Zarro, we don't know why there are no documents. But maybe there are even some paintings that he made between 1592 and 1596 that we may find one day. And the one that will find it, will become a great art historian. So I have a little dream, Lillo and Laura. if I find a sponsor, I would love to spend one gap year in Venice, searching into the archives, because I'm sure that there I will find something. Anyway, so there is no reason. I mean, Caravaggio, you know that Caravaggio was not even making drawings. There are no drawings about Caravaggio. He was immediately attacking the canvas and painting on the canvas without studying the figures before. That's why we have no documents. Was Caravaggio gay? Well, for sure, he loved to represent boys, that is some androgynic, some female attitudes. Rumor said that he was maybe sleeping with some of the collaborators he was using, that were mainly models. But at the same time, he had a great fight in Piazza Navona with the guy that was having a relationship with the main character, with the lady of the Madonna of the Pilgrims. And so he was having affairs with both boy and girls, I may say. But is it so interesting? What are the other theories about his death? Well, there is one theory that I actually, have been persuaded very much, that Caravaggio was actually coming back to Rome because before fighting against the Knights of Malta and got into jail, he managed to receive the forgiveness of the Pope. The Knights of Malta played well for him, okay? So they gave him the possibility to get this. Otherwise, why would have he ever get back to Rome, knowing that he would have been killed? We know that when he got to Rome, for 3 days, he got into jail because the soldiers didn't recognize him. And he had canvases on the boat that he was carrying to Rome. These canvases are all now in the Borghese Gallery. Why are all there? Because Scipione Borghese was somehow involved in the death of Caravaggio. Most probably, Caravaggio was asking for conditions to give these canvases to the cardinal. There is even one, I don't want to share again the screen, but the Saul with David and Goliath are, the head of Goliath is a self-portrait of Caravaggio, who is just giving his head to the Pope. There might have happened something that that forced somebody to kill Caravaggio, and because of this death, get the painting. Was it Scipione Borghese? We will never know. What would you say he had addictions over and above alcohol? I don't think he needed alcohol to fight with other people. I think his character was already enough high. He was, we know about, from the chronicles and his biographies, that even if a waiter was saying something a bit wrong to him, he would have thrown the food in the face of the waiter. So I would not just be next Caravaggio if he was not sure that it was really friend, a close one. Wow, you have a lot of questions. Do you think Caravaggio painted his own sufferings? No, I'm sorry. Claudia, I'm sorry. I'm not among those that like to say that the drama of Caravaggio's paintings come from Caravaggio's own drama. His paintings are too much rational, or too much complex to be just the reflection of his violence. Of course, he was living in a violent world, and he was reflecting violence in some of the paintings. He knew very well how blood was coming out of a neck or of a chest, because he saw it in the streets every time. But is he that drama, his own drama? No, it's too much of a simple lecture. Do you like Derek Jarman film? Yes, I do very well, because Derek Jarman made a film about Caravaggio. It's a very, very conceptual movie, but I loved it because it's another piece of art. So it's not a story about Caravaggio, but it's a way a contemporary artist would look at Caravaggio. Okay, thank you for listening. The recording is available. I'm sure they're going to explain you how. Dinner at Emmaus. I'm sorry, we have no time to speak about that. We can do a second appointment about Caravaggio with all the the paintings that I didn't show you today. Okay, just one more question. Okay, Elisa, I think you got late into the lecture. Why Caravaggio flee Rome? Because he had killed a public policeman, and he got condemned to death. He killed, they didn't tell you how he killed him. They were playing a play called Palla Corda, which was among tennis and volleyball, like paddle somehow, okay? And Caravaggio lost the match, and he didn't want to pay after the loss. And so they started to fight, and he killed him. But most probably, this killing was already planned by Caravaggio, because one of the players that he was playing with was an expert killer. And we know about that because there are chronicles that somebody met this guy around the corner before the play would start. So, and he was basically was called by Caravaggio, employed by Caravaggio, paid by Caravaggio to be one of the players and then be part of the killing. But of course, it was against the laws, and he had to flee Rome. Wherever he went, he left, how to say, not erasable mark of his passage. Thank you very much. Okay, it's up to you, directors.
Thank you very much, Costantino. Fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Lilo, for making it possible. I think you all going to be, I mean, the recording will be available, I think, soon, and I'm sure they're going to send you the link. So even the quick information I gave you tonight, you would be able to listen to them in a quieter way.
Grazie, Costantino. Arrivederci.
Next one will be, I think, 25th of June, Laura. You said 26th, but in the cover, it was written 25th. So I'm not sure.
Okay, I have to check it. I don't remember.
You will all receive the information about the next lecture, which is going to be about Michelangelo. Again,
yeah.
very.
There will be a reminder just after this, the end of the webinar. So that's the correct information in any case.
Okay, great. So again, it's going to be
25. Sorry, yes, 25th of.
Great. So another very bad character linked to a great talent.
Thanks.
Ciao. Ciao. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Ciao.